More information at jacksymphony.org.
The North Florida TPO is dedicated to transportation planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, resilient, and connected region. More information available at northfloridatpo.com. Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com.
This is WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville. Up next, national and local news from NPR and the WJCT News team.
Good morning, I'm Al Emmerich in for Ann Schindler. On today's First Coast Connect, it's the biggest stories of the week. Fallout and feedback after Tuesday's general election sends the state and nation on a decisive rightward shift. The sheriff defends officer conduct after some rough handling of fans at the Florida-Georgia football game. An arrest is made in the hit-and-run death of an Ed White High School student, and political drama ensues over the mayor's overseas travel bills. We'll talk about all this and more with our panel of journalists on our Friday Week in Review, and then that's the food and fun and future of the Jacksonville Fair as we talk with officials about plans for fans. You can join the conversation at 904-549-2937. Also email us firstcoastconnect@wjct.org or tag us on social. It's all ahead this hour after the day's news.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. The Justice Department charged more than 1,500 people with crimes connected with the deadly January 6, 2021 attack on the U.S. Capitol. NPR's Tom Dreisbach reports many of those defendants are celebrating President-elect Trump's victory and are anticipating pardons.
Outside the Washington, D.C. jail, supporters of January 6 defendants popped champagne. Nicole Reffitt's husband, Guy, is serving a 7-year prison sentence for his role in the riot, including bringing a gun onto Capitol grounds. She's hopeful that Trump will follow through on his promise to pardon January 6 defendants.
President Trump is a man of his word, and I feel like that he will definitely take action when it comes to the Jan 6 cases.
Approximately 140 law enforcement officers were injured in the attack, some with bats, stun guns, pepper spray, and fists. The FBI calls it an act of domestic terrorism. Tom Dreisbach, NPR News.
In Arizona, a ballot initiative passed by voters this week gives local law enforcement agencies authority to carry out immigration-related arrests. But the sheriff in one border county says he's holding off on enforcing the law. From member station KJZZ, Alaysha Williams reports.
Proposition 314 makes crossing the border in between ports of entry a state crime. Santa Cruz County Sheriff David Hathaway says actually carrying out those arrests would require far more staff, jail space, training, and funding than his 40-officer agency has. And he says it's not even allowed to take effect right now.
It actually says in the text that this law does not take effect until a similar law in Texas, Senate Bill 4 in Texas, is adjudicated by the courts.
SB 4 has been blocked for months while an appeals court decides whether the law is unconstitutional. Both measures have drawn comparisons to an Arizona law that was largely struck down by the Supreme Court more than a decade ago. For NPR News, I'm Alaysha Williams in Tucson.
California fire officials say the mountain fire burning northwest of Los Angeles has scorched more than 32 square miles. It's only 5% contained. The fire has destroyed more than 130 buildings, and nearly all of them are houses. Sandra Lafredo's home burned to the ground.
It's like I'm still numb. I haven't cried yet. I thought, when I see this, I'm going to cry. But I'm not. I'm just like in survival mode, like just find something that survived, anything.
California Governor Gavin Newsom has declared a state of emergency in Ventura County. There are blizzard warnings up for northeast New Mexico. Other parts of the state are under winter storm warnings. Some areas could get up to 8 inches of snow. Forecasters say travel will be difficult or even impossible. New Mexico's governor has declared a state of emergency. This is to help residents deal with the wintry storm. You're listening to NPR.
And this is WJCT News 89.9 in Jacksonville. Good morning. I'm Stephen Ponson. It's 9:04. St. Johns County School Superintendent Tim Forson is retiring at the end of this school year. He made the announcement yesterday. Forson has served as superintendent since 2016 and has spent more than 40 years working with the school district. The school district says it will soon begin the hunt for his successor. Forson's last day on the job is June 30th next year. The Mandarin Community Club will honor Veterans Day on Sunday with its annual wreath-laying ceremony at Billiard Park on Brady Road. The event starts at 1 in partnership with the Sons of the American Revolution's Jacksonville chapter and the American Heritage Girls. Parking is at the Mandarin Community Club next door on Mandarin Road. The community club will also be collecting greeting cards for servicemen and women through the American Red Cross Holiday Mail for Heroes program. A collection box is at the front door of its club building right now through November 18th. Looking at the weather today in Jacksonville, no wintry weather around here. We'll have partly sunny skies this afternoon with highs in the lower 80s. An isolated shower is possible, but not a whole lot of chance for rain. Mostly cloudy overnight with lows in the lower 70s, which is above average for this time of year. The rain chances will go up tomorrow in the afternoon, and we could see some showers in the early afternoon. It will be mostly cloudy with highs in the lower 80s. Mostly cloudy overnight tomorrow with lows getting into the lower 70s. Then looking ahead to next week, we'll start the work week off warm.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Schwab, with Schwab investing themes like artificial intelligence, renewable energy, or pet passion. Over 40 themes to invest in. Learn more at schwab.com. And the Doris Duke Foundation.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided in part by Baptist Health and North Florida TPO.
Opinions expressed on the First Coast Connect Week in Review are those of our panelists and do not reflect the views of WJCT News 89.9.
Good morning and welcome to First Coast Connect. I am Al Emmerich and I'm sitting in today for Ann Schindler. If the voice sounds a little bit familiar, I've been a voice of WJCT and radio and TV for many years and an ardent supporter of this wonderful space and place we are all in today. So it's an honor to be sitting here on a Friday, which means it's time for our First Coast Week in Review. Boy, what a week. Among our topics, the Sheriff's Office moves quickly to quash controversy over viral videos taken at the Florida-Georgia game. We're going to unpack that. Of course, that little thing on Tuesday called the election brings state and local politics into alignment with a predominantly red nation. What does that mean, and how is that being touched locally here? A local woman is accused of hit and run following the death last month of a standout teen athlete, and we're going to learn more about what the latest is there. And on the local side, mayor and city council member trade barbs after a call for an investigation into her recent travel expenses. Just another day at the office, ladies and gentlemen. To talk about this and more, I am joined by some wonderful folks here. We've got Sylvia Perry, editor at Jacksonville Free Press.
Good morning.
Hello, good morning. Jasmine Monroe, anchor at First Coast News.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
Good to see you here today. Annette Gutierrez, reporter at Action News Jax.
Hey, good morning.
And rounding out our group here, Sean Frieder, assistant professor of political science at the University of North Florida.
Morning. Always good to be here.
Good to have you here today. Let's unpack our first topic today and go Florida, Georgia. And it's so much more than just a football game. Annette, this was an issue that you covered very closely. In fact, you basically asked most of the questions at the presser the sheriff held. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Catch us up on what's happened and how the sheriff's office has reacted.
You know, it's interesting. People, all they do now, they take out their phones.
Right.
And as soon as they see something happening that looks relatively juicy, they put it out and they start pressing record. And so we saw 2 videos come out that showed some pretty aggressive, it was an aggressive appearance. You saw some cops using use of force on some people. And Sheriff T.K. Waters, he took it on quickly. I mean, they compiled all this video and held a 1-hour briefing to kind of talk about what we didn't see. There was some missing context. In the first video where we saw the guy with the handcuffs and the taser, the guy was not listening to the cops. They told him, "Hey, you're being ejected." And it was the cops who were called there. It wasn't like the cops came to look for a fight. Sheriff T.K. Waters says they were called there by a safe worker that was there in the stadium. And he was just not listening. He claimed that, the safe workers had kidnapped his kids. He was just not complying. And he started getting aggressive. He even started using, he threatened the cops saying, I'm going to kill a cop or I'm going to stay here. Those are my options. And that's pretty aggressive to the cop. But despite that, they still followed protocol. That's what Sheriff T.K. Waters said. They said, listen to us. They said it a few times, and then they took a step back. They used their taser. Then they got out their handcuffs. And then that's when, again, he still didn't comply. He was going to try and put the handcuffs behind him. And then, people were saying, oh, it looked like you were using it as a brass knuckle. Well, that was one of the questions I asked. Were they using it as a brass knuckle? He said, no, we always tell them, do not drop the handcuffs. Keep it in your hand so that you can immediately do that. And so he just threw the punches with the handcuffs, on the side. It wasn't like he put both together to make it appear like it was a brass knuckle.
I thank you for illustrating that, because it's another reminder. And he called the use of force ugly but appropriate, and that's something that I think we so often forget, especially if you've never been involved in a situation like that, let alone you're watching it. Their work as law enforcement officers is not pretty.
Right.
And so this conversation around being appropriate. Jasmine, this is a case where first impressions can be undone by a fuller context.
Yeah. Honestly, I am thankful that they were able to put a production, because I'm going to call it a production. That was like our whole full newscast for the 5:30, 5 o'clock show. Being able to see both sides is so important. I know that you see police body camera video. It only sometimes shows half. You could even see in how they explain it only starts recording when an incident starts to occur. Seeing the full-blown video and this making national news instantly. The football game wasn't even over. I was covering the football game in the morning. Like Sheriff T.K. Waters said, people were inebriated. It was 9 o'clock in the morning. I mean, they were going. Some of the tailgaters were there since Sunday. They've been drinking since Sunday, so it's like a get up and go thing. And people aren't listening. Think about after having one or two drinks, you really don't know what you're doing. Going up the steps, I was thinking, I was hoping that this guy wasn't going to go over, because he was fighting, or even an officer or someone else getting hurt. After Sheriff T.K. Waters talked about that, I think it's important for everyone to know. Yes, of course, always record. If you see something, say something is what they say. But that wasn't an incident, like you said, where they went to go searching for a fight, like a lot of people says that JSO typically does. They go looking for fights.
Well, you touched on something, and that is okay. So it's a football game. It's exasperated by the fact that it's such a rivalry, but then all the other folks that are around in that area that may be drinking as well, that are armed with a phone, that are inebriated potentially. Regardless, the heightened emotion of the moment drives almost a react versus respond. And so, Sylvia, there was racial slurs apparently involved in some of these comments. And doesn't that impact how people view this incident as well, and what they're going to do with the information?
Absolutely. I think when the videos first surfaced, you saw the pieced together videos, and it looked like the officers were attacking the man. But after seeing the full video in context, and him actually railing racial epithets and telling him he's going to kill him, he's going to track down and fight your family, that's not only a threat against another human being, but a threat against the officer of the law. And I think that totally heightened the entire situation.
Yeah, this is, there's 360 degrees to any perspective.
Right.
And that's not just what you think, it's what you see. And I think this is an example where the sheriff's office really came forth to give a lot of perspective. And last question on this topic, Sean, do people really understand the impact of failing to comply?
I mean, I don't think that people do, especially, again, if they're inebriated. But, I want to say that, when it comes to watching this stuff unfold, this is, at least I can speak to the psychology aspect of this. It's always been a problem that, we have a tendency to react to things very quickly without full context.
Right.
And that's something that as we have an increasing volume of news, especially during a week that has an extreme volume of news with the election, people are just not paying attention. People are not paying attention to really big stories. People are not paying attention to small stories. And, you might get the headline version. You might get the clip really quickly. Technology has made it easier for this kind of thing to happen over time that, you whip out a camera and again, like you get a limited context of things. But people base their decision-making and their thoughts about things over about, 5 seconds of context, even though, I'm glad too to see that there was a production to show the full context because we often don't get that enough in a lot of these stories. And that was very helpful for a lot of people. I think that resolved conflict that could have otherwise further come out of this and lasted for a longer time.
And I also, for me, I know that national news, and I know the next day was, of course, the election. But for me, even being a journalist, I want them to continue to pick up the story after it happens.
Right.
They just push out this story. And again, Sheriff T.K. Waters said they have to look at the full video. They have to still gather all the information, even us as journalists. We can't really make a comment until we have all the facts. Once you have all the facts, I think as journalists, it's still our job to continue the story. I know that the election, but I didn't notice with networks picking up the story to continue on and tell the full story even after the election. So that's the disappointing part, and that's where I get when a lot of people start to say they don't trust the media and things like that, because it is our job to do it. So I know of course within my station, and I know other local stations, I want people to understand the difference between local and national news. It's our job as the local news to make sure we hold people accountable for these things too, and then we push it up to network, and it's their job to also tell the story, because I'm from Pittsburgh, and I had family members sending me, what is going on in Jacksonville?
Yeah, I heard it was a fight, but I didn't realize it was a fight. Hey, listen, if you're just joining us, we're talking about the week's biggest headlines, and you can join the conversation by calling us at 904-549-2937. You can also send us an email, firstcoastconnect@wjct.org. You can also watch our program live streaming now on Facebook and WJCT YouTube page. So let's move on to a topic that might be on people's mind at the top of our news feeds all week long, of course, and that being an election rebooting the nation's political power grid. Sylvia, I'd like to start with you. What are you hearing in terms of community reaction and feedback?
I tell you, it's definitely a tale of two cities. You have one side that's full of jubilation and another one who feels like their balloon has been totally deflated, in the city of Jacksonville. As we know, last election, Jacksonville would actually turn blue for Biden, but this time it was a total switcheroo. And those that are Harris fans lost. Those were Trump MAGA fans were absolutely elated. But I think it's just a time to reboot and regrid. As I shared with friends, the sun will shine tomorrow, and we will keep moving on. But I think a bigger take, as no matter who you are in looking at politics, is what the politicians represent. And as you have someone in office now that can say anything and do anything and be held infallible, that's just going to filter down to our day-to-day. And as that happens in the workplace and people say what they want, they grab them where they want, they do what they want without any repercussion, if the highest land of the law can do it, what do you think is going to happen at your job?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it's breathing is such a requirement, what side you're on, whether you voted one way or the other, there's always that pause, but this pause seems a little bit longer. One thing there apparently wasn't a big pause in was the voting. I mean, people showed up, but was it record numbers here in Duval? Jasmine, you covered the election returns. We know it was huge, not record setting, but what did that look like?
I was at so many precincts going around. I know that a lot of people did the early voting. Even myself, this was my first time doing early voting, and I did it because I didn't want to be at the polls when all the chaos happened. That we heard what happened at at the beaches with that situation with the machete, and I just didn't want to be a part of that. Even though I'm a part of the news, I wanted to make sure my duty was handled. I know a lot of people just wanted to do the mail-in ballot too. They just wanted to feel a lot safer. But also, this was an election where people wanted to be, I would say, secretive about who they voted for. They didn't want to really shout or tout. There were some people who were proud of who they voted for, and others, didn't mention it. I know previous years, people were able to say it without telling you that you are a racist for believing in this person, or you care too much, you lean too left in this situation. So I thought this election was definitely something that a lot of people said they weren't so surprised, but for me, I think I learned at a very young age that you can work hard, you could do whatever you want, and you still not get the position that you want. And I learned that at a young age. I think a lot of people need to learn that too as well. But no matter what, I do appreciate how can I say this? I do appreciate this not being an ongoing thing. I know last election it was collusion and things like that, and people mentioning that. She conceded. She called President-elect and congratulated him on his new presidency. It's his term that's coming up. I think that it's even something so simple with that starts at that. We hope that just trickles down, to everyone in the public and in local communities.
Well, it's a lot of people I spoke with really said it felt smooth, it went smooth, and that built confidence in the process, the framework. And I think that's what you're alluding to here. We've got a caller, and then I want to come back with some thoughts and comments from you because we're just at the tip of the iceberg. We've got Michael, who is joining us from the north side, talking about the topic of civility and decency being overrated, white privilege alive and well. Michael, what are your thoughts here? And please let us know what your question is for the panel.
Yes. Good morning. Yeah, that's basically what I wanted to touch on. I think these are two hard truths that we in polite society really don't want to confront and address. But like you just said, Donald Trump getting elected, to me, after all that he's done, after all that he said, not just with the electoral vote or the electoral college, but the popular vote, to me, that shows that civility and decency are overrated, because nobody here, nobody on this panel, nobody listening to this can say at any point Donald Trump has displayed any kind of penchant to be civil or to be decent. He's been the opposite. And then also, like you said, to me, this is a full display of white privilege at its finest. And the reason that I say that is because there is no other race in this country that could have been an adjudicated rapist, could have been a felon, and also said that he's okay with the would-be assassin shooting through the press to try to get to him, and still not only retain the party's nomination, but then also turn around and win. And that's a hard truth that we in the minority, people of color, have to live with on a daily basis. We may not say it, we may not be able to speak it and express it, but we know that we couldn't get away with a quarter of the things that Donald Trump has gotten away with and still be accepted. And that's a hard truth that people don't want to confront.
Michael, thank you for that, and thank you for sharing those. I would do a disservice to unpack what he just said in full regalia here in the short period of time we have. But I think it speaks to how are we going to find a way forward to have conversations, which has always been the question, isn't that it's been, but now the temperature of the necessity to have these conversations has even elevated past those in minority who were affected so severely before that are now reaffected, but even more are away from the table. Right. I want to just kind of turn it to some local issues. The national topics are obviously stealing headlines, but Governor DeSantis invested heavily, both personally and his political capital, and taxpayer money in the form of the state pocketbook, $50 million on Amendment 3, $20 million on Amendment 4. What does that look like in the next phase of its impact? I'll start with you, Annette.
It was interesting. We heard that the marijuana campaign, that one had one of the most dollars put into that campaign, and yet we still saw it fail. And the same with the abortion one as well. A lot of people, from what I heard, a lot of people were disappointed, especially there was a lot of commercials and a lot of misleading headlines, and everyone was so confused about what it actually was about. And down to it, it was legalizing marijuana and abortion rights. It was bringing back and allowing people to have abortions. And I think there was just the lines in the amendments people were confused about, and there was just a lot of people who were upset, and a lot of people. Well, I was at the Duval Democratic Party that night on election night, and my counterpart, Robert Grant, he was at the GOP. So I obviously felt a lot of what the Democrats were feeling, and they were very hopeful, they were very excited, and then, as each hour progressed, they were just getting more and more disappointed about seeing that the amendments failed, that, obviously their president didn't get elected. So, it was just a lot of confusion leading up to when we saw those results come in. And I think that's where I think a lot of people were upset and just seeing
Right.
that it didn't pass, especially with it being so close.
Sean, you study the science of politics. This is your lifeblood, your career, but also your personal passion. Can you just, in a couple of minutes, pardon me, but in a couple of minutes, can you help us understand what does the political framework and infrastructure do now? Like, what's the playbook, regardless of what side you're on? Like, how does that mechanism move forward, and so that we can understand what's happening beyond our own feelings and emotions?
Yeah, I mean, each party's definitely got a different narrative that they're going to have to play with now. I think to start with, I know that the parties both have to take a look at their strategies going forward, and especially the Democrats have to soul search a little bit. And I would say especially the Democratic Party of Florida. There's a ground game issue that they have there. I mean, if you look at what happened down in Miami, you saw signs of this coming in 2022, where there's this huge flip, especially with Cuban voters in Miami-Dade. This is an 11-point advantage for Republicans in a major metropolitan area, and you just don't see those numbers really in any major metropolitan area. You see a large amount of population density. You can pretty much just guarantee, without knowing the name of the city, that's probably a place that's going to go blue. And I think the story behind, Amendment 3, Amendment 4 failing, that's pretty shocking. I think that's a story of a ground game issue. If you just simply have more people from one party turning out significantly so than the other, people are going to be talking about the money. And to be clear on 3, I was utterly shocked. I had a few things that happened before this election. I was like, if this thing happens, this is what would shock me. And at the national level, things went in one direction. But, Trump winning all 7 swing states. He doesn't pick up Minnesota. He doesn't pick up a state we didn't think would swing. Harris obviously doesn't pick up Florida, which would be the next state that would swing. But you look at what happens in the state of Florida, and you have these narrow losses just under the 60% threshold. So we like to focus on thinking about the campaigns. A lot of this stuff goes beyond the money being spent. It goes beyond the messaging being spent. It's just simply who is turning out. And it's not an accident that, you see the turnout numbers that you do. Campaigns aren't everything, but at the same time, the fact that we saw more early voting and mail-in ballots from Republican voters, that's not just an accident. That's one of the things that the Trump campaign said very openly that they wanted to target this year. In the past, they'd maybe not promoted that as much. Now, this is something that they realize if you want to get people to vote, make sure that they vote when they have an opportunity to. And Election Day is a tough day to vote for a lot of people. It's not a holiday. It's not on the weekend like it is in a lot of other countries. So if you want people to vote, give them an option to do so conveniently. And they really tried to emphasize that message in rallies, in their commercials generally. So Republicans, I think, are going to look on building those further successes. They know what has at least appeared to have worked in this case. I would say I think there's a lot more to unpack in terms of how much this is about us versus about the world at large. People are very frustrated with the way things feel right now, and we've seen this not just here in other countries as well. Incumbent government after incumbent government falling down. So Democrats, I think, have to take seriously what just happened to them, probably change a lot of their messaging.
Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting, but while you're on that topic, so I like to look at the world when it gets super complex through the head and the heart, right? There's the head, there's the functional decisions, choices we make, yada, 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 the laws we pass, but the things that drive us are this emotional connection and the feelings that we have. I want to stick in the head for just a second, and I open this up to everybody. The conversation is, the Democratic Party, they almost needed this kind of ball peen hammer type of impact to say, hey, things have to change. But all politics is local. And while we're driven by this national campaign, these topics at a local level, at a state level, are what's going to affect us. What do you see at a local level that we can possibly anticipate the Democratic Party, the Republican Party taking action to do that's going to affect our local politics? Stepping off of your comment about the messages, and I'll open it up to anybody.
I think kudos needs to be given to our Duval Democratic delegation because many of the amendments that failed almost passed in Jacksonville, such as marijuana. Marijuana, we overwhelmingly voted 60% for it. So as far as our that messaging here, it works, but statewide, they definitely need to take another look as to how they get it out.
I personally think when it comes down to it, and this is across the board for every company, for every business, no matter what you're looking at, people are asking and looking for something completely different. That's with electronics, technology, everything. So when it comes to the Democratic Party, when it comes to the Republican Party, I really believe that Republicans listen to what the people want. People were talking about the economy the whole entire time. That's all they talked about. Groceries. They didn't care about racism. They didn't care about sexism. They didn't care about any of those things. All they cared about is, how can I get my grocery bill to be lower? And they spoke directly towards the people. I mean, if you tell somebody what they want to hear, they're going to go with you no matter what. And they're going to trust and put their faith in you no matter what. And I think that is something that no matter what party you are with, I think that if you handle it in that way and know that the world is completely changing, it's technology based, it's, you just have to, I think people are so stuck in their ways. And if I can't remember the saying right now, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it, of course, right?
Yeah.
We know that. But also, if you don't look forward to the future, nothing will change.
Well, and it's and I can't claim this, and I'm going to probably mess up the quote, but it's very hard. National politics, especially politics itself, is so much about the vision and the future. But for us as everyday citizens, it's very hard to look past when the step in front of you might be a hole.
Right.
You just got to deal with that hole. I want to continue this, but we've got some active callers on the line, and I'd like to go ahead and give them a chance to jump in. On line one, Linda from Mandarin. Thank you. Linda, you had some comments about the amendments.
Yes, and the comments you guys just made was the framework to look at it. People were asked, what did they care about? They cared about their pocketbooks. So we enshrined in our Constitution the right to fish and hunt, but not for a woman's right to have autonomy over her body, because everybody was worrying about the $2.99 gas down the street or the eggs that I now find reasonable at BJ's over whether or not another woman would have to die after not being able to get miscarriage care. So to me, it's like they did appeal to what was going on in people's hearts, but the fact that we could see to enshrine hunting and fishing rights that people already have against abortion rights, they did not see their neighbor. They saw, I want to hunt and fish. I don't care if you get abortion care. That's how it feels. Now, I know feelings aren't always facts, but that's how it feels. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to jump in for a few more calls. I'm just going to state on. It's like, you all have such awesome stuff to say. And it's like, I don't know how Ann does this in such a short period of time. I salute her. I'm going to jump over to line 4, Jason from San Marco. With Jason, I got to ask you to just kind of keep a quick comment. But thank you for joining us this morning.
Thanks for taking my call. I'll be very succinct. I have 3 things that I'd like to share and ask for commentary on. Number one, it's my opinion that Donald Trump, in truth, has been running for re-election for 4 years. I realize he only announced it about 18 months ago, but everyone knew that he was going to run again after he claimed that the last election was stolen. The other comment I have is Republicans and conservatives and Donald Trump absolutely have an enormous advantage in the media between Fox News, One America, Newsmax, and all of the very influential right-wing bloggers. And the third thing I want to say is that Kamala Harris literally had 3 months to run, and she couldn't and wasn't really allowed to and didn't take advantage of running on the successes of the Biden administration. That's it in a nutshell. Thanks for taking my call.
Man, can we just send that guy like some surprise gift? I mean, he was succinct and he had his facts straight. I want to just take one other call here. I'm going to jump over to Dondra from San Marco, who had a question. Dondra on line 2, really quickly.
Hi, thanks for taking my call. So I have a question regarding Amendment 4, and something that I haven't heard discussed very much is, strangely, oddly, the interpretation beneath the amendment, which I'm driving right now, but I remember it. It says something to the effect of, this amendment will cause more abortions and fewer live births, It went on. And I don't understand how first of all, I didn't see any other interpretations like that under amendments, but this interpretation was extremely biased and I don't think necessarily described what the amendment was about. And I had someone tell me that the ACLU was looking into this, that it is illegal to put such an interpretation on a ballot, and that Governor DeSantis is the one who had that included. Now, I don't know how it was all across the state, but with such a close vote and then such a biased interpretation beneath the amendment, I'm just questioning.
Dondra, thank you. And I don't want to disservice the weight of your question, so I'm going to restate it to the panel, and we're going to stretch this out a little bit. Can one of you, maybe you can give us, Sean, how is the language of these things constructed?
Yeah, so this is an interesting thing. I mean, the financial impact statement is something that has to be there. We saw this after every amendment, but I would say this actually in some way relates to the taxpayer money that went to some of the no campaigns, where there's a little bit of potential legal wiggle room, where if you can talk about something that's financial impact, but you can also maybe shove something into the financial impact language that might have more of a substantive rather than financial point to it. I mean, right there, it's going to say something, as the caller said, about there's going to be more abortions and less live births, and this might have some kind of cost. But the real thing there, you get to have that conversation because it's something that, could impact the finances of the state. But what you've really done is also put a little bit of a campaign message into that. And that's, I think, similar in some ways to what happens with, the no campaign receiving some taxpayer funds. You look at, Florida Department of Transportation, and they're able to send out some messaging based on, Amendment 3, saying what they think will happen in terms of, the impact on their work if they have more people that are potentially driving while intoxicated. So I think more than you usually see in an election, I think this is going to be something for a lot of courts to decide potentially in coming months, is exactly where is that line between, saying something that's either an impact to the Bureau or the impact to the, the amendment on the ballot versus what seems like a more substantive campaign statement.
It is such a proof point that we have to do our own homework.
Right.
You all as journalists, as representatives of multitudes of voices, have much more than your quick soundbite, your interview, and those are available on the blogs. They're available in your media outlets, in your writings, in your newsletters. And hey, I've found myself guilty of it. You get to the poll, and you're like, oh, I forgot to look that up.
Right.
But Ella, that's also a case of, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. It's our job to make sure the information is out there and make sure that the interpretation is there, but you cannot force people to actually read what it means to them. And unfortunately, a lot of them wait until they actually get to the polls to do their research.
I always say get a sample ballot.
Absolutely.
Always. I mean, the sample ballot is your homework before you get there on election day. And that's when you can ask the questions. That's when you can pull out your phone and do your research. And there's so many ads that happen. Even for us, I'm confused with myself, doing the news and seeing these ads rolling and what's right and what's wrong. And, the language that they use in the commercials, it's to confuse you.
I saw a lot of fear mongering. I remember one commercial regarding marijuana saying being in the stadium and surrounded by marijuana smoke. But smoking is not even allowed there, and that is a statute that would have
on the
been
playground.
led it off,
right.
No,
the
fear mongering got everyone.
And so it's almost a perfect time. I'm going to go to line 5, Sally in Springfield, who had a question. We were just talking, Sally, with the media about what they do and how they are creating opportunities in multitudes of ways to get more information. What is your specific question for this panel? Keep it really short if you could, Sally. Thank you.
Sure. So not really a question, but at first I want to say I really admire many of the people in the press, and I really appreciate your work and recognize its importance in our country. But I feel like, and I'm not the only one, that one candidate in particular was what they call sane washed, treated as if he were someone from the past, someone normal, and very little recognition of the accomplishments of Joe Biden, the CHIPS Act, lowering insulin, the infrastructure bill. Those are things that are helping Americans. They may not just be on felt yet. And then the other part of it is the inflation after the pandemic and
corporate greed, as some people call it, raising prices when it's not necessary. I wish the press would be reporting some of these things so that people were informed, because a lot of people just find their information on the nightly news. So I feel like that's a frustration, and trying to find solutions for what happened with a convicted felon being elected by over half of the country is just a lot of, it's shocking that for many of us trying to figure out what's going on and trying to find solutions. And I just wanted to say, I love the press. I love you guys. I don't think you're fake or anything, but honestly, but I feel like something is holding everyone in the press back from calling out what Donald Trump really is. Thank you.
Yeah, Sally, thank you. And, listen, I first of all want to just, as a broker, if you will, of this conversation, I know how hard it is to call in and to ask a question that emotionally you're charged about, but to do it respectfully. And Sally, I want to say thank you, because I feel like you did that. We need to move on, but I just want to give each of you a chance to respond to that comment. And I'm going to ask you to keep it super fast if you can.
Yeah.
But, there is this question of, hey, these are good people, regardless of where they stand, but, and there's always that but. And we'll start with you, Annette.
And I do want to speak to the media aspect. I was mentioning earlier, people on social media, as soon as they see something, they believe it. And I think there's a lot of people who put a camera in front of the face and then they start talking and they appear to be a source. And I think a lot of people listen to those people online and they may not be a trusted source. And I feel like there is a lot of that out there. A lot of people who go on YouTube and start talking and saying these things and sharing their own opinions, but making it seem like it's the real truth, and maybe it's not. And I think there's a lot of that out there.
Okay, so what would you say in short order? What would you say to appear in the media, okay, that says, hey, we need to make sure that there is a lack of facts sometimes, but also to let the public know you are working to get that truth?
Right. I mean, I ask those questions. I make sure anytime I write an article specifically, and I think a lot of local outlets try and do this, they try and get both sides and make sure they include what these people will say, maybe what the Democrats are saying and what the Republicans are saying, and this is what the language actually says. And then you can determine your own opinion, but I'm not going to put my opinion in there. I'm going to make sure we get all of the information, put it in an article, and make sure that you get it. And we get it from the source. We actually ask the question to that leader of whoever is, like, for example, and I just want to add this, there was the machete incident that happened.
Yes.
And, I saw some people putting out their fake news, but it was literally the police officers who made the arrest and who said this guy was doing a crime. And yet these people still want to say fake news, even though it was the police officer who made the announcement. We're just the messengers, we're just passing along the information.
I think also people too get confused with the difference between a news anchor and a reporter and a commentator. There's a lot of people who are able to go on YouTube and state their opinion as fact. And I think the thing with us, we have the FCC. There are certain things that we can and cannot say on air. There's words that we can't say on air. There are so many things that we cannot do, and we're confined. Even for my station at First Coast News, speaking about the Florida-Georgia game or Georgia-Florida game, when that happened, of course, we saw it ourselves. I had it to my phone, probably before half of the world got a chance to see it. But there's no way that we can just go on air and just say something that we have no idea about. We can post it and tell you, yes, this is the video that we saw, and we're working to learn that. We have a team. It's called the Verified Team, and you ask us a question, and we do the story from both sides. I know when you look at the election, there's two sides, and one person, some people believe, is completely wrong, and the other person can save America, is what some people may think. But at the end of the day, if he's holding a rally and she's holding a rally, we have to cover it both.
So, in the interest of time, because I want to make sure we extended this conversation, rightfully so, but I also want to make sure we have a few moments to talk about the mayor and what's been happening with the travel. But what I'm pulling out from this is that we as citizens need to do a better job of doing our own research.
Right.
But I think also there's a responsibility for us in media to better educate and bring opportunities for the public to understand your process, right?
Mhm.
Sort of the question I asked you, Sean. It's like what's happening in the background, because so many people don't understand what happens in the background of the media.
Stop listening to YouTubers, please.
Yeah, this is what I tell my
If you want to
students
know what we can
constantly.
do today, just turn off YouTube and just be done with the commentators, because a lot of them, they don't have degrees. You have multiple degrees. People think that, going on TV, oh, did you need a degree for that? Absolutely. You need a degree to go on
Sure.
air.
Yeah.
And, the power that we have, we can go on TV. I can go on air right now and say something completely bizarre, and you have to trust what I say. That's also something that I get even with my friends. They're like, "Oh, I didn't know that." I'm like, "How do you not know that?"
All right, so I'm going to hold you there.
Go
I'm going to
ahead.
hold you because I know you wanted to respond, and then I want to talk about the mayor's situation. Sean,
I mean,
real quick.
social media is a fire hose of information that's also it's more tittillating to people. They want to watch something that has a little bit more of a verve to it, and so they do. I just want to also say, we've talked a lot about local media. National media is also trying to figure out how to cover these kinds of story, and they have to worry about it from a different angle. Local media, you want everyone to watch. You want to be strictly bipartisan. National media, they're chasing particular audiences and demographics. So New York Times, I think, they're going to pull some punches because they want to increase their viewership, their readership. They might also pull some punches because, they're worried about, what regulations might come down on them. And I think this is where you saw Jeff Bezos pulling the plug on Washington Post's endorsement. They're worried about the environment. What happens if we do this? And then maybe we might be looked at in a negative light in a future Trump administration. What could they do?
You have to consider the source.
Yeah.
Yep,
You have
and you have to investigate this.
You have to.
right?
And closing on that, I mean, what
Yeah.
you see on CNN and what you see on Fox News and MSNBC, it can be the same story, but it'll have an entirely different slant.
Okay. Mike, I'm so sorry from St. Augustine. You're holding so long. I wish I had time to take your call, but thank you and Sally and for everybody that called. We've got just a few minutes here before you send you all out into your world of joy and rapture and easy things. Want to talk real quickly of the mayor's travel. Her trip to London the week of the Jaguars game has come under some question and generated some heat, even on a national scale. Jasmine, why is she running into such a pushback on her trip?
Well, it was a city council member, Terrence Freeman. He called to audit Mayor Donna Deegan about her trip, saying that she basically accusing her of mixing personal vacation with city business, being that her supposedly supposed to attend that football game, which she did not. So she just I want to read her verbatim. She defended her trip, emphasizing transparency and noting that her travel is a matter of public record. The mayor's office stated that she participated in the UK government's International Investment Summit and met with banking companies too as well, and worked on economic development to bring business and jobs back to Jacksonville. So she also stated that, half of her trip was for business and half of it was for personal. And when that personal part kicked in, that's when she used her
And she
personal
paid her
money.
own money. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sean, and I'll let you close on this topic. Again, backside of this, the political world. I mean, politicians take trips all the time. What's the science behind this, or the whatever, how it works?
Yeah, so when we look at the effects of scandals on people and their reelection bids, sex scandals are salacious, but surprisingly, they don't actually have that much impact. People get complicated feelings about that, and we've maybe seen some of that in what happened over the past several years with the Trump administration and campaign. On the other hand, the scandals that tend to be more effective with voters is where you seem to be mixing public funds and personal travel and things. And so this is something that I think if you could at least just even throw the headline out there as a possibility, a lot of people are not going to hear the follow-up and the evidence. But I want to also just briefly tie this back to the election. I mean, she's there because she's looking for possible investment opportunities. And, now that Trump's going to be in the White House and DeSantis has already been in Tallahassee, Jacksonville, with a Democratic mayor, is going to have a harder time pulling in earmarks and funding from both national and from state sources. So she's got to look for it elsewhere, and that's kind of a justification for her trip.
Wow, let's just hit the pause button there, shall we? Hey, listen, for Sylvia, Jasmine, and Annette, Sean, thank you for being here this morning and putting forth the energy and the time that you have put forth. Coming up, strange shift here. From pickle pizza to the wave swinger, we're going to dive into all that's happening with the fair and grab that corn dog and put it in your hand. This will be a great conversation. Thank you, all of you.
Thank
you. Have a good day.
Pleasure.
Congaree & Pen, dedicated to agriculture and culinary endeavors, offering field-to-fork dining and outdoor experiences on over 300 acres. Sip, dine, explore. Information at congareeandpen.com. Terrell Hogan Law.
I'm Wayne Hogan. Accidents can happen when you least expect it. For decades, our attorneys have dug out the facts to help juries decide who's at fault.
More at terrellhoganlaw.com.
WJCT and ViStar Credit Union are honoring the memory of Fred Rogers by celebrating 22 years of giving back to the community with the annual Mr. Rogers Sweater Drive. The drive runs through November 30th and accepts new and gently used sweaters, jackets, blankets, and new socks and underwear. Contributions may be dropped off at WJCT and all ViStar Credit Union branches, Sudeth Moving and Logistics, and the Tom Bush family of dealerships. For more information, log on to WJCT.org. Contributions will be donated to selected nonprofit facilities within the First Coast area.
On the next Florida Roundup, two states separated by politics. Florida and California are often pitted against each other as political opposites. But what about the people? What do you here in Florida want Californians to know about politics here? Email us radio@thefloridaroundup.org. I'm Tom Hudson. We will connect voters in the Sunshine State and the Golden State to hear and speak with each other after Election Day. Be sure to join us Friday noon until 1.
The country hands back the keys to the White House to Donald J. Trump.
This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have.
Kamala Harris urges her supporters to stay strong.
This is not a time to throw up our hands. This is a time to roll up our sleeves.
More on the Friday News Roundup next time on 1A.
Today, starting at 10 on WJCT News 89.9.
All right, it's fall, and there's a lot of things that come with fall, the cool air. Okay, maybe it's a little humid these days, but pumpkins, and you don't get the fall air without the cool fair.
There you go.
It's a new T-shirt. Please coin that. It's the Greater Jacksonville Agricultural Fair celebrating its, 69th year downtown in the sports complex. And here with us this morning to share everything you can look forward to is Bill Olson, president of the Greater Jacksonville Fair Association. Bill, welcome.
All right, thanmes for having me.
Yeah,
Glad to be
no,
here.
you get to round out what was a very exciting week, of the world. But now, let me just tell you this, all right? Anybody that gets the opportunity to say the following words: Amish donuts, Korean corn dogs, soul food egg roll and turkey leg, and pickle pizza, this is the way you round out a week.
There you go. You got it.
So the fair kicks off. Tell us, when is it running? How long does it run to start with?
Sure. So we opened last night. We're going to run through the 17th. So next Sunday is our last day. Open at 5 o'clock on the weekdays and noon on the weekends.
All right, I'm going to deal with the elephant in the room. First thing people are going to think about, well, I don't know, I can't read their minds, but one of the questions that has to come to mind is, oh my gosh, do I want to go there? All the construction and everything happening. Help me understand what people should know and need to know from an access standpoint.
So parking is controlled by the city. So we have all the parking lots around the stadium are open, so we can park in any lot you can find. And then getting into the fair, we have 2 gates to come in, one by the parking garage and one by the stadium.
So plenty of access, easy access. Yeah. And I can tell you just, we're here at the WJCT studios, which are downtown. There's, with obviously the new Hart dump off and stuff. None of that really causes any issues. And
no, it's still pretty easy to get there.
All right, good. Well, let's get to the good stuff. A new midway with rides that include, correct me if I'm wrong, the Cliffhanger, Hydra, Giant Wheel, Wave, Swinger. Tell me about those.
So we're excited about the change with the Midway company.
Yeah.
They're one of the top ones in the country. A lot of new rides. Like you said, the Wave Swinger is a swing ride that's really cool. They have a roller coaster. They have it's called a Spaceport. It's like 65 feet tall that swings you around. It's pretty intense. I'm not going to get on it, but it looks good. I let my daughter try it. But a lot of cool new stuff this year. Expanded Kiddieland area for the younger kids. So it looks really great.
Take us behind the scenes, and we'll go back to some of the other major things that are happening for sure. But how has the fair changed over these years from the standpoint of, well, first of all, you operate it. How has that changed? And then the experience, how has that changed?
So we try to keep some of the traditions alive. So we still have, all the agriculture and all the stuff that you would probably have seen if you came back in the 70s or 80s. That's kind of the same. But ever changing, trying to give people a lot of bang for their buck, right? Because people, want to spend their money wisely. And so we try to do a lot of activities for them for their admission price. So a lot of free shows, a lot of concerts, like we said, the rides, the food, all that. So we're always every year we try to make the fair better in some way. So we're always trying to evolve and make it a better experience for the guests coming.
As an operator, how does technology play into the experience of the fair?
So obviously everything's digital now. We have tickets on your phones. You can buy them in advance and they can scan them at the gates. Their new ride company, they have, they don't do the tickets anymore, the paper tickets. They have cards that you can put credits on and they scan them at each ride, kind of like a Dave & Buster's where you scan your card. You can actually even get an app on your phone and do it that way and scan your phone on the rides and get on. So this new company is really advanced in that aspect for sure.
When you are looking for a midway company, what is your litmus test?
So safety is the first thing I'm looking at and what their safety record is. And this company they have it's called the Circle of Excellence, which is a national certification through the outdoor amusement world. And it's hard to get. So they have that, which is a big key for me. Safety, the quality of the rides, the look of the rides, newness of the rides, their staff, how their staff interact with people, that kind of customer service are the things I look at. And this company checked all those boxes for me.
So you've got 2 audiences here. Let's just play imaginary school box here or whatever, imaginary lunch box and see what we get. You've got, and I'll just pick myself, right? I've been to the fair with my kids years ago. They're all adults. 57. I know I look like I'm 24, but that's fine. And it's like I haven't been to the fair in years. What's going to push me to go there? And then the other side is, hey, we've never been. We're a family, and we want to experience it for the first time. What do I most need to know, and what does that new first timer most need to know?
So where else can you go where you can come to an event, you can see some cows, chickens, rabbits, right? You can eat pickle pizza. You can go on a Ferris wheel. You can see a concert. You can see a sea lion show. You can see a hypnotist or a illusion show.
Right.
All on the same day. Right. I don't think there's anywhere else that you can do that. So.
Man, and that's for everybody. That's why.
Everybody.
Fantastic. Listen, I could talk about this for hours. That's crazy as that sounds, right? Thank you so much. Again, the fair dates, just super quick.
So open till the 17th, next Sunday.
Okay, sounds good. Well, that's our program. Thank you so much, Bill, for joining us, and thank you for listening. If you missed anything, you can catch our rebroadcast at 8 o'clock tonight. Also, check it out on WJCT.org or your favorite podcast. Don't forget, listen Saturday at 4. Neurologist Dr. Joe Servin joins us, as well as we've got the discussion around patient diagnosed with prostate cancer. It's going to be a very in-depth conversation. The executive producer of First Coast Connect is David Luckin. Our show is produced by Stacy Bennett and directed by the awesome Brady Corum. Jamie Valet is our associate producer, and our theme music is performed by Club de Belugas. Join us Monday when I get to step back in here for some great stuff on WJCT News 89.9.
Support for First Coast Connect is provided by Baptist Health and the North Florida TPO.
Baptist Health is a proud supporter of First Coast Connect. Baptist Health, committed to building a healthier community for all of us. More info at 202-4YOU or baptistjacks.com. The North Florida TPO is committed to shaping our transportation future. We're focused on planning, funding, clean fuels, and new technologies for a vibrant, connected community. Learn more at northfloridatpo.com.
What was once a death sentence is now a manageable chronic disease. I'm Dr. Joe Servin. Join me tomorrow at 4 for What's Health Got to Do with It, only in WJCT News 89.9 Jacksonville.